So, overall, the loneliness experienced by folks on White Deer Plain comes in a few flavors. First, loneliness from being rejected by society. Second, loneliness when you're swept up in big events and can't control your own fate. Third, loneliness from doing what you know can't be done, but you do it anyway. All right, let's dive into that first kind, loneliness from not fitting in with society. The first gen guys and the Bai and Lu families, two old sirs, they don't show up much in the book. They're just there to bridge things. The second gen by Jiaxuan and Lu Zilin, they're the backbone, but they're still on the same path. It's the young folks of the third gen who really get hit by the changes. So we have to talk about this one woman who's totally different. She ties together a lot of the joys and sorrows, the comings and goings on White Deer Plain. And she's not from White Deer Plain. She's Tian Shao, married to Lu San's son, Heiwa. Lu San worked for Bai Jiaxuan. Heiwa went to work in another village and hooked up with the family's concubine. When the scandal broke, he went ahead and married her as his wife, bringing her back to White Deer Plain. They both came to White Deer Plain, hoping for a fresh start, but the whole village shunned them. The villagers were dead set that Tian Shaowei was a loose woman and wouldn't take her in. The clan chief Bai Jiaxuan wouldn't stand for this outsider breaking the rules. He wouldn't even let them into the family temple to honor their ancestors. So Haiwa and Shaowei ended up living in a rundown cave house outside the village. Now, Tian Shaowei had a really sad life. Her parents married her off as a concubine to this scholar in his 70s when she was just a kid. The old guy was superstitious. He had this weird health ritual where she had to put 3 dates inside her every night, then pull them out in the morning for him to eat, thinking it boosted his health. Believe it or not, this crazy story comes from real life. Now, a quick note. Chen Zhongshi, when he was writing the book, looked through old records from 3 nearby counties. He was shocked that out of maybe a dozen volumes, half were all about virtuous women and faithful widows. Most entries like this. For example, a woman married at 16, had a kid at 17, widowed at 18, then spent her whole life taking care of the in-laws and kids till she died. Chen Zhongshi was heartbroken, saying these women gave up everything for a tiny spot in the records. He felt he had to create Tian Chao differently, to stand in for all those women and fight back against this brutal system. All right, so let's get back to the story. Tian Shao, who escaped that perverted old scholar, didn't end up living happily ever after. Later, the rebellious Haiwa went with the times, leading the village in organizing a peasant movement and setting up a massive peasant association, but it was quickly crushed. While Heiwa was on the run, Lu Zilin seized Pian Shoei and cunningly used her to get revenge on the Bai family. Oh, this revenge plan was truly vicious and bizarre. The Bai family's eldest son, named Bai Shaowen, was the heir to the clan leadership, painstakingly groomed by Bai Jiaxuan. In every word and action, he followed his father's teachings, upholding virtues of benevolence and righteousness. But Lu Zilin had a wild idea. He actually incited his mistress to seduce Bai Shaolin. So what kind of play was this supposed to be? Turns out he wanted the Bai family's eldest son to mess around with the despised woman to humiliate the Bai family's honor. So what was the outcome? Bai Shaolin fell right into Lu Zilin's trap super easily. Not only did he openly commit adultery with Tian Shao, but he got hooked on opium, blew through the family fortune, and became the laughingstock of the whole village. But as the story went on, Bai Shaolin, after hitting rock bottom, joined the Kuomintang and shockingly became a county magistrate for the nationalist government. As for Haiwa, who escaped alone, he later turned bandit and then led his crew to get recruited into the Kuomintang army, later still He joined an uprising against the nationalist rule and was publicly executed by Bai Shaolin. But while her men were making big moves, Tian Shaowei was the only one sinking into endless loneliness. In seducing Bai Shaowan, she genuinely fell for him, and her smoking opium was just out of pity for him. She was also super worried about her husband Heiwa's safety, begging Lu Zilin to save him and give him a chance, unlike the messy love triangles in city life. The chaotic ties between Tian Shao and these men weren't about romance, sometimes not even just lust, but a super real life disaster. In the end, Tian Shao Ed was brutally killed from behind with a dart by her father in law, Heiwa's dad, Lu San, because Lu San believed she caused the downfall of both Bai Shaowen and Heiwa. Chen Zhongshi never uttered a single word evaluating Tian Shaowei's character, neither praise nor condemnation. He only wrote that after Tian Shao's death, the largest plague in White Deer Plains history erupted, nearly wiping out the entire village. Lu San, who killed her, became possessed by Shaowei's spirit. Finally driven mad, clan leader Bai Jiaxuan ordered people to burn Tian Shaowei's decaying corpse. The fire blazed for 3 days and nights without extinguishing. Villagers built a pagoda over her ashes to suppress her spirit, trying to prevent her eternal peace. Why did this ordinary woman, who never killed or burned, receive such cruelty? This was Tian Shaoyi's loneliness, rejected by everyone in life and even in death. How utterly tragic, fundamentally different from Tian Shaoyi. The second loneliness is more abstract, the helplessness of being swept by historical tides. Among Bai and Lu descendants, 3 other youths had the most dramatic stories. Bai Ling, Bai's youngest daughter, and Lu's sons, Lu Zhaopeng, eldest, and Lu Zhouhai, second. This second loneliness manifests in these 3. While studying in the city, Bai Ling and Lu Zhouhai joined student movements, fell in love, and vowed to serve their country. Believing both Kuomintang and Communist parties aimed to save China, they flipped a coin to choose sides. Lu Zhouhai joined the Communists. Bai Ling joined the Kuomintang. But events unfolded unexpectedly as the political landscape shifted violently. When their alliance fractured, Bai Ling excitedly told Lu Zhouhai she'd switch to his communist side. To her shock, he'd already defected to the Kuomintang. Later, Bai Ling was assigned to pose as the wife of a communist cadre, who turned out to be Lu Zhaohai's brother, Lu Zhaopeng. They developed real feelings and became true spouses. As the war progressed, all 3 ultimately died. These youths all shared deep patriotism and yearnings for love, yet were crushed by forces beyond them. But in chaotic times, they turned from lovers and brothers into enemies, like 3 waves forced into separate currents, unable to reconcile. This helpless loneliness followed them to their graves. And finally, let's discuss the third loneliness in the novel, a special, subtle kind. There's this detached character, not from Bai or Lu clan, Mr. Zhu, teacher at White Deer Academy. Through him, we see a unique loneliness, persisting when success is impossible. Chen Zhongshi said all characters were fictional except Mr. Zhu, based on the last master of Guanzhong Confucianism. Modeled after scholar Neo Zhao Lian, Mr. Zhu embodies Confucian wisdom. He cared deeply for people suffering, becoming Confucian orthodoxy incarnate on White Deer Plain. He drafted a village covenant for White Deer Village. Though sharing the same name as Lu Zilin's official title, their meanings were worlds apart. This covenant was an educational document, meticulously regulating behavior, family hierarchies, and marital relations. Most villagers were illiterate and couldn't read the covenant. Yet its powerful norms persisted through generations of oral tradition. Mr. Zhu also compiled White Deer Plains county records, laboring tirelessly, even demanding they be buried as his pillow after death. While modeled after New Zholian, Mr. Zhu also reflects Chen Zhongshi himself. When Japanese troops reached Hung Pass, Mr. Zhu rallied 7 elder scholars to march toward the front lines. Amid social collapse, village children flocked to cities for modern education. Chaotic villagers abandoned the covenant's constraints. In war-torn times, the government couldn't care less about record keeping. And 8 elderly scholars heading to battle? Utterly futile. But Mr. Zhu always does what he knows cannot be done. This heroic loneliness doesn't need others' approval. It's enough to have a clear conscience. Tian Shui wasn't accepted by society, and Bai Ling and the Lu brothers were swept along helplessly by events. In the end, their loneliness came from external forces, whereas Mr. Zhu's loneliness springs from deep within. It's self-made. So that's what we've covered about White Deer Plain, this national secret history. So the second hidden aspect is the deep loneliness within the characters. All right, finally, we'll talk about the third reason White Deer Plain is called a secret history. Those captivating ghost stories in the book. Although the novel has many supernatural tales, Chen Zhongshi is actually a realist writer. How realistic is it? For instance, he set a rule. He'd only describe natural scenery he'd personally seen, or he wouldn't write it at all. Chen Zhongshi lived in northwest China, so his novels often feature landscapes from the Loess Plateau and Wei River Plain, but he avoids ocean or desert scenes entirely. But his realism isn't absolute. Metaphors and symbols are used masterfully in his writing, and they're truly impressive. So, looking at the whole novel, we see absolute reality blended with partial fantasy, not conflicting, but enriching the plain stories, making them fuller and more vivid. For example, the legend of the white deer on White Deer Plain itself is unrealistic. White Deer Plain got its name from a magical white deer. Whenever it appeared, crops thrived, predators and pests vanished, and even paralyzed elders could rise to cook. Another example, after Tian Shao-yi died, her ghost possessed Lu San, making him act erratically. Lu San's wife and Bai Shaowen's wife were also possessed by Tian Shao-yi on their deathbeds, recounting her murder scene flawlessly. Even more bizarrely, burning Tian Shao-yi's corpse attracted thousands of butterflies, more mysterious than the fragrant concubine in My Fair Princess. We must admit, many techniques in White Deer Plain draw from magical realism in A Hundred Years of Solitude, but Chen Zhongshi firmly opposed labeling his novel as magical realism. Chen Zhongshi never used a single word to judge Tian Shaoyi's character. Not good, not bad. Actually, the legends about ghosts and gods on White Deer Plain existed thousands of years ago, long before magical realism literature reached China. For example, the ghosts in Pu Songling's Strange Tales from a Chinese Studio are uniquely Chinese, not fantasy nor just superstition, but rooted in deep cultural psychology. Deep in our national psyche, no matter how modern science grows, we always believe in mystical stuff, feelings that logic can't explain. On White Deer Plain, every villager's heart fills with reverence for ghosts and gods. For instance, Tian Shaowei, once despised, became a ghost. Villagers knelt terrified at her grave, and their attitude did a total 180, as if they suddenly realized her injustice overnight. On the other hand, Chinese ghosts and gods differ from Latin American magical ones because they're super down to earth. Every ghost or god in White Deer Plain has their own joys and sorrows, not lofty or mysterious. When Bai Ling and Mr. Zhu died, they transformed into white deer and entered their loved ones' dreams. Tian Shaowei's ghost lingered to tell villagers about her injustice and pain. Ghosts and gods can communicate with real people, not scary, but close to the heart. Though these spirits have powers, they share human morals. Gods praise the good, ghosts punish evil. Karma at work, the purest belief of Chinese peasants. So, from these 2 points, we see Chen Zhongshi is a realist, and White Deer Plain's ghost tales aren't magical. Because these spirits are both feared and embraced, they're the most down-to-earth ghosts. All right, we've pretty much covered the main stories of White Deer Plain. Through ordinary lives, White Deer Plain realistically shows the collapse of the patriarchal clan system, revealing China's secret history via family sagas. In this secret history, We see Chinese peasants' authentic lives and our nation's deep-seated loneliness. All right, that wraps up our journey through White Deer Plain. You'll find the reading notes below the audio. We'll meet again with the next great book.